Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at JessinoTweets and at SheKnowsArsenal. Welcome to another episode. Guys, we are going to have to get into it today because Arsenal have been knocked out of the Europa League by Sporting. And yeah, I've had very little sleep. I don't know why. I stayed up late last night. Like, I may have gotten like an hour worth of sleep. And so I've been on my phone and been seeing what everybody's been saying and, reliving that game quite a bit. And so we have some things to talk about because I think a lot of us may have been a little bit too arrogant about what it was going to take to get through to the next round of this competition. There was a lot of Sporting is going to be easy, it's going to be fine. We should just roll over them and go to the Emirates, it's going to be fine. For me, I was a little bit like that as well. Like I thought that Arsenal will be able to put together a good performance for this game and get through because we were at home. But to be honest, like, you can kind of tell when Arsenal is going to play well or not from like the very jump, the very beginning of a game. When we were away from home at Lisbon, like in Lisbon, I knew from minute one when I think Viera got the ball and they were bumbling around at the back, Matt Turner, and then Ben White just shanked it out of bounds. I was like, we are not getting out of here with a good result. And I felt like that for most of our Europa League performances. And if I'm honest, for most of our cup performances this season. And, I just wonder how you guys are feeling about Arsenal going out of cups and this idea that, like, it's fine. I think that we put out a strong enough side yesterday where we should have felt a lot better about that performance. It wasn't a quality thing for me. It was an application thing. It was a commitment thing. It was a mentality thing. And so I'm seeing all this narrative about how Arsenal are just not ready to compete on multiple fronts. They're just not in a place where they have the squad depth. But nobody really felt that way before the game started. Before the game started, it was, this is going to be easy. The Emirates, look, Kim Kardashian's in the house. Whoop, whoop. Gabriel is going to play with Saliba. We're fine. Odegaard and Partey get a rest. And boom, like, the way the game felt like me, it was always on a knife edge. It was just like, I had that same feeling that I had in Lisbon. Like, anytime they come down the pitch, they're probably going to score a goal. And they were very dangerous. They looked very comfortable at our place. And I found even after Xhaka scored the goal, like, we needed 2 or 3 goals because this is just not the Arsenal that we know. We know when we're playing well. When we are playing well, we could beat anybody. When we're playing the way we did last night, we could lose to anybody. And I found our performances in the cups to be all kind of like that. When we spoke about it earlier on in the season, I was concerned about the way we played away from home at Zurich. I was concerned about the way we played away from home at PSV. I was concerned about the way we played, I think, at home against Brighton. I just felt like we should be doing better in the cups, and it should not just be almost like, okay, well, we rotate a couple guys in, trust the squad, and then the squad just takes us out of these competitions and it's just fine. And I get that we're competing for the Premier League. I get that, I get that it's not the end of the season, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying put it in a ball and throw it into the trash because it's over because we didn't get to the next round of the Europa League. But what I am saying is that Arsenal have got to get to a point mentally soon, because next season it's going to be the requirement, that they need to put in committed performances every 3 days. It cannot just be we play well in the Premier League and then we just do nothing in the cups. And I was deeply, deeply disappointed by the performance that I saw yesterday from a lot of individuals. I thought that they were playing at 5s and 6s for most of that game. I saw a lack of commitment. There was no fire. I thought we only really started popping it around and looking like Arsenal once Odegaard came onto the pitch, and that was in extra time. We didn't grab a hold of the midfield until Thomas Partey came on the pitch. And that's very concerning to me because even though I don't think that the midfield of Jorginho, Viera, and Xhaka works, I do believe that they could have done a lot better. 100%. Ugarte, or whatever his name was having a field day. He had no pressure on him. Game is won and lost in the midfield. I know it's a cliche, but it's the truth. And so, you can't tell me that there's no quality in that midfield. Jorginho has won the Champions League before. Granit Xhaka is one of our most experienced players. Zinchenko, who pops into the midfield and basically plays like a deep line playmaker for us, or a number 10 or a number 8 or whatever he does, he has won the Premier League several times. So I'm not hearing this whole we didn't have a squad good enough to fight on both fronts. We just did not apply ourselves in a way that was acceptable for Arsenal. And it was, for me, a little bit embarrassing. Some of the possession, the passing, the just falling on the ground on every single challenge, not getting first balls and second balls, the amount of times that they were just in on goal and should have probably put it away, for me, was just, especially at home, not professional in some regards. And it couldn't have gone any worse. It could not have gone any worse if we were just going to say, you know what, whoever we have out there, that's the team that's going to go through it. And, whether we win, or lose, it doesn't really matter. That would have been better than going all the way through extra time and having our starters have to play those minutes, and Saliba and Tomiyasu getting those injuries, and having Martinelli have to step up for a penalty and miss it. I mean, it just could not have gone any worse, really, for Arsenal, because the damage that this could have potentially done to the Premier League campaign, we don't know what it'll be, but I'm feeling like there's going to be a hangover from it. And so I'm disappointed. I really am, by the fact that I know that those players can do much better, because I saw them play the best football that they've ever played against Fulham. And it's not just about Jorginho either. Jorginho played very well against Aston Villa. It was a lack of application and a lack of care and unprofessionalism throughout that performance. And yeah, it was not good at all. It was terrible. And I do think that, we have to keep it, a buck sometimes, and just say exactly what happened in that game and keep it real. Get it out of our system, have a little bit of therapy, and throw it away, because we need to back the boys this weekend. Patrick Viera has been sacked at Crystal Palace, so we could be facing a side that has a little vigor, a little pep in their step. And so Arsenal have got to get over this. And so I want to get this all out today. And that's just it. Get it all out today, throw it away, move forward, because we still have something to play for. But that performance, and the idea that it's okay for Arsenal to just go out of cups like willy-nilly, the way that we have been in the last 2 seasons, I do think it's worth a conversation, 100%. Let's see what you guys are saying. Um, let's see. Glow says, I cannot forget that silly backflip from Viera. I thought the attacking players, Viera, Trossard in particular, were very wasteful and were not able to impact the game the way that we know that they can. Martinelli was okay, but not great. I thought Jesus was probably our best attacker, and he came off at like halftime. So, attacking wise, we were just not on it in any sort of way. But it's really hard to get your attack working when your foundational aspect of your midfield is just completely wrong. I've said this. I said this in my preview. I said it after Lisbon. I don't want to see Zinchenko, Jorginho, and Xhaka playing together, and I don't want to see Viera in a midfield that does not have a platform where you have somebody dominating the territory, and somebody dominating the ball and controlling the possession. When you have Thomas Partey and Odegaard in there, Viera can float and play like a number 10. When you have Jorginho, that really is not a ball winner and has no athleticism, is afraid to get caught out, and you have Granit Xhaka as the player, like basically taking over the Odegaard role, you're fucked. You just are. Like, that midfield doesn't work. And Zinchenko, he's so gung-ho and he's so desperate to get involved at the base of midfield. It just feels like too many cooks in the kitchen. And so we were never able to really go through the gears and create any sustainable attacks, because I also think we were afraid to get caught out, because Sporting knew that we were just going to leave that left-hand side wide open. I have no idea why Mikel Arteta, after the first leg, did not shut the back door on that left-hand side. Why Zinchenko played this match, I do not understand. It was already obvious from the first leg that they knew that that was the way to hurt us, was to kick it into that channel and run into that space. We got caught out so many times from that long ball, and I just don't understand why we didn't try something different. Tierney could have played, Tomiyasu could have played on the left. I know he got injured, but he probably would not have gotten an injury if he was on the other side. And so Zinchenko plus Jorginho plus Xhaka and then plus Viera, that don't work. You know, you needed to either play Odegaard or Thomas Partey or Tomiyasu on the left in order to give us some stability, because that group does not work. But yes, attacking wise, like we just never really got going. And it was just a terrible performance from Arsenal, to be honest. Kokachi says, "You are one negative gooner. Absolute ridiculous that you are associated with Arsenal. In what way?" I said at the beginning that this is not the end of our season, and we literally just have to like take this performance and throw it away and back the boys. But if you think I'm going to sit here and lie to you guys and say that that was not an unprofessional performance from Arsenal and it wasn't embarrassing and way below our level, then you can go, because I'm not going to lie and say something that I don't believe. I'm not going to lie and say that performance was not terrible. It really, really was. And so there was mistakes made by the manager. There was mistakes made by the players. Does it mean that they're the worst players in the world? Absolutely not. But if you don't like what I'm saying, you can leave the stream. I have no problem telling people that don't want to be here to go, because I'm not about to sit here and say that what I saw yesterday was anything like what an Arsenal team should be playing like at home. So goodbye if you don't like it. Like I said, we need to talk about these things. There's nothing wrong with having these conversations, but it doesn't mean that we have to live there. But it was terrible. Get real. Like, we don't need to be so precious all the time. Ash A says the 2 early subs plus Jesus' injury also ruined what strategic calls we could have made in that game. Let's see. Keno says, "Jess, please focus on the positive. We can still win the league." But this is what I'm saying, you guys. For me, the beginning of this is therapy, for us to speak about what we thought went right, which was very little, and what went wrong in that match, how we feel like it's going to affect the Premier League, what we need to go do from there, and also talk about whether or not it's okay to go out of the cups. We can talk about the positive, but we will do that later. But before that, I want to talk about what happened. So focus on the positive. There are plenty of channels out there that act like we don't need to talk about anything for real, that we just need to always be positive, and that's it. Plenty of channels for that. I want to do both sides of the coin. We get plenty of positive on here, but yesterday's performance was horrendous. You know, it really, really was. Doesn't mean we're not going to win the league. Doesn't mean like our season is over. Doesn't mean that these players have not completely blown my mind this season. But that performance was way under the level. Score says, "The way we throw away cups is embarrassing. We aren't Spurs. This is Arsenal. We should be winning trophies. And Arteta has to be held accountable for yesterday's performance was shocking and piss poor." I've seen so many gooners online saying, "We didn't really need this competition. I'm happy that we're out. You know, it's embarrassing to be in the Europa League. This is the last time we're going to be in it. Good riddance," and all that kind of stuff. A trophy is a trophy, and we have opportunity to win one. And so, you know, I will never say that it's okay to go out of cups or we should be happy. I believe in prioritization, but I also feel like your prioritization should not take you completely out of these cups so quickly. I think the Brighton match really rubbed me the wrong way, because I do think we probably should have went through from that game. Manchester City, you could kind of give it a pass because it's the best, one of the best teams in Europe. But, you know, we never really put our best foot forward in those competitions because we never played our best 11. And I just wonder what it would have been like had we had not rotated 5 or 6 and we rotated 1 or 2 and just tried to, like, you know, put a little bit more on those and see if we could have went through. Arsenal have got to get to a point where they're competing on multiple fronts. This season, it is kind of okay because we know that this team is growing and try to get to the next level. We need to bring in some new players. We know that we're kind of in that in-between period, but it's definitely not something we can take into next season. And I do feel like we're getting really like comfortable with going out of cups early, and a trophy is a trophy, and we should not act like Spurs. Spurs are the only team that I know that act like trophies are not important. And so we don't want to kind of put ourselves with them. We need to remember that this is Arsenal Football Club. Trophies are important. It's never a positive thing to go out of the cups. Yesterday's performance was unacceptable. We move from here, but we have put a massive amount of pressure onto the Premier League, and these players have got to perform. Glow says, Jess, you are 100%. Tierney should have played and tell you those injuries could have been avoided. And I also believe the players probably were protecting themselves for the Prem, bar Gabby Magalhaes. Yeah, I understand. Like, I get that the performance yesterday for me was not about quality. It was about application and commitment. They were not committed to that game or this competition. The levels that we dropped to in terms of performance in the Europa League this season has been nothing but poor. If we're honest with ourselves, like, let's keep it 100. And we kind of were like, it's okay with, because we're playing a rotated squad and we got through the group stages pretty easily. But at the first sign of adversity, we're out of the competition. We could not rise, like, get our levels up enough to put in at least a decent performance against a team that, to give them credit, like Sporting, they played like that was their cup final and we played like it was a chore. So they 100% deserved to go through, and they were the much better side for the majority of the game and were quite comfortable the entire game against us. So yeah, I think that, some of our players are heavily focused on the Premier League, but you look back on it, and if we don't win the Premier League, we'll look back at some of these moments and say, could we have not given a little bit more? Ali A says it's a lot of pressure. Lucas says, Jess, it's a mentality thing. Boys are so excited about winning the league. We are a young, emotional team. It's tough to be 100% in multiple competitions. It's tough, but it's something they have to learn. It's something that they have to learn. And it's been a 2-season thing, not just this season. Last season, we kind of went out of all the cups pretty pathetically. We've done the same thing this season. We've made excuses. We've said we don't have the squad, or, we're fighting for the league, or, it just is too difficult and this and that. Starting next season, that's just not going to be, it's, we have to move from this era of like, it's just okay to go out of the cups. It's because it's not. Like, for Arsenal Football Club, it's not. For Spurs, yes. For Arsenal, no. Saksham says, I defended Viera from the start, but after the game against Sporting, I am done with that bozo. Now, I wouldn't call him a bozo, but he had a very poor performance, especially in the second half. I think he needs to do more. I think he needs to step up. I just don't think that was his best application. Like, he would look very timid and kind of deer in headlights. But again, with Viera, you can't have Jorginho and Xhaka next to him. You have to give him a platform to operate in, but he has to do more. And really, everybody needed to do more. It was really poor. Chris says, I respect that, Jess. It's all optics. Analytical conversations can't all be positive. John says, focus on the positives. They got cheeks clapped. Don says, some of our players have to be held accountable. This is the thing about when we don't play well, people just want to say, focus on the positive, don't say anything, move forward. But then we live in bliss every single time that we win a game, and we milk it to death. And I just feel like we need a little bit more balance sometimes. You're never as good or as bad as you think. And I think that this team needs, that performance yesterday deserves a little bit of criticism. It really, really does. It was well below our level, and I don't think Arteta's sitting there saying, well, we're fighting for the league, it's fine. Like, I really, really don't. I think we need to get real. But that doesn't mean that, we can't bounce back from this. This team has shown that they have been able to bounce back, so I'm not saying that it's over. Let's see. Aha says, what is it with Arsenal in Europe? Even prime Arsenal didn't do well in Europe. Yesterday, all game bar extra time, we were poor. Second half, mainly, we were outclassed. Arteta got out coached, not going to lie. The coach, I should know his name, but I don't. He's a good coach. Like, the Sporting coach is good. So tactically, he got it spot on. I mean, he knew exactly how to exploit our weaknesses, I think, and he showed his hand in the first leg, and that's what really frustrated me about the way that we set up with our team yesterday, is that the Sporting coach showed that he knew exactly how to hurt us, and we set up exactly the same. So I didn't really understand why we did that. I mean, we put in Gabriel instead of Saliba, but we still left the back door open and we're too arrogant with the midfield that we use. We should have started either Odegaard or Partey. We should have. Um, but in terms of like, the European conversation, I don't know if it's a Europe thing for this group. I think it's under Arteta, we've been able to make deep runs in 2 competitions since he's been manager. We won the FA Cup in his first season, and we got to the semifinals, and were knocked out by Villarreal in, I think, his second season. Um, and so, but the common denominator there is that we were really poor in the league, and so we were under pressure to perform in the cups at that point. So we had to win the FA Cup to get some form of Europe that season, and then we got it under Mikel Arteta, and then because we were poor in the league again, we needed to push for the cups. We were already kind of effed, and we were screwed in the league anyway. Now that we're performing better in the league, we don't seem to be able to turn our attentions and commit anything towards the cups. It's not that we don't have any players that can step up. It's just that the mentality is not there. And so I think overall for Arsenal Football Club, Europe is an issue. But for this group, I'm not quite sure that it's Europe. I just think it's a anytime we can only really concentrate on one thing at a time. And we spread our we don't want to spread ourselves too thin. We go too hard in one competition and then the pressure becomes so much. Last season, we didn't have anything else but the league, and we still didn't get it done. Not saying that the team will do the exact same thing, but I do think that we put ourselves under massive pressure here. But yeah, Arsenal have struggled in Europe. It's something that we need to, do better at, but I think it's going to take time. I do think European pedigree is a thing. I think look at Manchester City. I mean, they could potentially win the Champions League this season. I do think that they probably will, but look how long it will have taken them to get there. Whereas you have teams like Real Madrid that just kind of walk the competition every season. And so European pedigree is a thing, and it'll take Arsenal a while to build it up. But this season we've done nothing to try to get any further to get a more positive get to a more positive place with it for our club. Richie Rabbit says what happened was a thin squad with one eye on the Premier League was unable to get past the inspired Sporting side. Thin squad, I'm not buying the thin squad thing. When we started that game, people were not saying, "Oh, I think that's, we're a little bit too thin." We had Jorginho out there, we had Viera out there, we had our best, or not really, Reece Nelson, Martinelli, and Jesus. Trossard came in for Jesus, so there was depth there. We had, Tomiyasu had started instead of White. We had Tierney that never stepped onto the pitch. So the idea that we have a thin squad, for me, it's not shaken out. The only teams that have better squads than us are probably Manchester City and maybe Chelsea, English-based clubs, in terms of quality and depth. Like this whole thing that we just cannot compete and cannot put in a decent performance in Europe because of this thin squad doesn't wash for me, because the same thin squad is able to get performances and results in the league. So it was just we did not apply ourselves, and the group of players that started the match shit the bed. It's really just that simple. And Sporting were inspired and they were good, but we know when we're inspired, we're good as well. We were not inspired. They played like it was their cup final. We acted like it was a chore. And there's no excuse for an Arsenal side to play the way that they played at home yesterday. No excuse. Like, come on, CC says, remember what happened when Arsenal were knocked out of the FA Cup? Europe is important. They need to make a dent in European cups. No point in just participating. It's so good that we're knocked out of the cup thing. I'm just never going to align with it. I think it shows weakness. It's giving Spurs. It's giving, not elite level club, speak. I don't like it. It was really gross this morning seeing all the tweets go out about it. We don't need to beat down the team per se. Like, we don't need to act like this is who they are. We know that they're better than this, but we should have higher expectations for them in matches like this. And we should feel like they should get beyond the round of 16. That's pretty poor for this Arsenal side, a team that, everybody is saying we're the best team in England and this and that. We should be doing better than that. So yeah, Europe is important. Um, I didn't say at the beginning of the season that we had to win the Europa League and we had to do this or we had to do that. But the only thing that I require out of the team is every single game they give their best, and they at least give it a really good go. And if they get beat by a better side, then they get beat by a better side. We didn't show that, and so yeah, that's what's really frustrating for me. um Saksham says Arsenal fringe players are of no use, proper ass. So, I mean, who are the fringe players? Like, I saw people going at Holding. Holding was not an issue yesterday. Jorginho, like, this is somebody that has won trophies before and was fine the other day. Like, they did not apply themselves. I'm not going into this lack of quality thing. If that's what you're saying, that they don't have quality, then like, let's get real, that they just didn't show up, 100%. Lucas says, Jess, it's a mentality thing. Well, oh yeah, you already said that. Let me go down a little bit more. Let's see. Ash says, have you seen the Europa League draw? Those fixtures in April and May would have been murder. I don't care. Like, that's the thing. It's like we have so much copium going on in this in this in this fan base right now, where we're trying to convince ourselves that, it's such a good thing. It's such a good thing. I think we've put ourselves in a position where the pressure is going to be so much, and it's yet to be seen whether this team can deal with that level of pressure, because the expectation is now that we go, we play at the Emirates against Crystal Palace, we get 8 points clear, and we basically have to win all the rest of our games for the rest of the season. So, I see Arsenal fans really, honing in on the Champions League and putting up the schedule for Manchester City and where they could drop points. I'm not even thinking about that. I'm focused on us. Are we going to be able to get up for this game against Crystal Palace at the weekend after the emotional toll of going out of the Europa League the way that we did? Because I don't think we go out of it with our head held up high. I really, really don't. So I understand that, like, we want to figure out how this could be a positive thing for us. Going out of the cups is not positive. It's just not. It's disappointing. We should be doing better. And, hopefully we win the league, because there's so much riding on it now for me. Um, let's see. Kwan says, I think English Premier League is the ultimate target this year. I don't mean that the Europe is not important. Just keep C1 and C2 or even C3 for next time. Let's see. Score says, if we were serious this summer, I'd spend a minimum of 300 million should be spent to get all these players. I highly doubt we're going to spend 300 million. But we were having a conversation in a group chat today around, like, what are the expectations? And from my perspective, like, I don't I think, with nothing else in our way at this point, we not necessarily should expect the team to win the Premier League, but we really like, it's so hard to say, because I still think that there's a long way to go in this title race, really. Manchester City are no joke. But I think it just notches it up even more, where it's like the expectation is kind of that we will deliver that. Next season, my expectations are a little bit higher. I will have expected that we went into the market and brought in 3 to 4 quality players that take us up to that next level where we can compete on all fronts, not just go out of the group stages of the Champions League, be able to maintain our Champions League spot, also fight for the title and win silverware. This team is far away from that right now. That would be my expectation next season. this team is far away from that. Um, you know what I mean? So there are expectations of the team beyond this. And, I think that this season is a little bit of like, them still trying to get their feet underneath them, but the expectations will start to get a lot higher next season. So I hope they can rise to that. There's 133 of you guys in here. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel. Richie says, so you agree we need more players because the squad isn't deep enough? Of course, I think we need more players. Like, it's not even about depth. I think we have a spot probably in our starting 11 that could be vastly improved. So I think we need to address that. I think, midfield wise, we have no athleticism beyond Thomas Partey. If he does not play, we have nobody in midfield that can dominate territory. And that is a huge worry for me. So you need to bring in somebody like a Declan Rice, you know, and Arsenal have to go to the next level. I know that over time we've kind of convinced ourselves that you can't have quality players sitting on your bench because they won't want to be there and they'll kick up a fuss and this and that. Once you have Champions League, that stuff stops. You have plenty of minutes to go around for players that are quality, and it's also about creating competition. If Thomas Partey can't play every 3 days, because right now he can't. He's not playing every 3 days. Maybe I don't even know if he could do it, with his injury issues. So you got to bring in another DM. And then at the 8 position, you got to bring in somebody else. You need to upgrade on Xhaka's position. A right back will need to come in because see how we are right now. Tomiyasu's injury has put us in a situation where now that Saliba is also, not really at 100%, you almost have to play Rob Holding. If Tomiyasu is not injured, you could play Ben White at center back and then put Tomiyasu on the right. So a right back has to come in so that if something were to happen to Saliba, you can move Ben White over to the middle because Rob Holding is not, even though I don't think he was the problem yesterday, we just can't build out of the back with him. So we do need, some zhuzhing up on the squad 100%. But do I think that we lost yesterday's game because we did not have quality and we did not have enough players? No, I think those players just literally didn't try and they were not focused on that game and there's a lack of commitment. Jaycon Gunnar says Declan Rice, McAllister is my number one choices for the summer. Jay says City has a better team. We are just having a better season. We need to chill and be humble. You can banter as soon as we win. Trim says the other competitions are used to keep the entire squad match fit. At least we are seeing our deficiencies before the summer market. John says, tired of some fans giving excuses to dropping out of the Europa League for the Premier League. If we are in the same position next year, but it's the UCL, they are saying we should focus on the Premier League. Then we need to win both. I don't know if we need to necessarily win both, but what I am saying is that we did not even apply ourselves at all, and I do think that, you can look at a team that gets to a couple of finals, and if they don't win them, you feel a lot better about it because you feel like you applied yourself to a point where you pushed it a little bit. Arsenal aren't even making finals, and I think we need to be a little bit more serious about cup competitions. I don't think we have to win the Premier League and the Europa League this season. I think that's still a little bit far away. I'm just disappointed by the way that we went out more than anything. You know what I mean? Boy says, if we had the quality, then why is everyone slandering Fabio Viera? I mean, I really do think people are trying to make it into we just don't have the squad depth. So, we've won games before against, like competition with, Jorginho and, Fabio Viera in the side. It's for me, no, the quality is not exactly the same. When you have Viera in there, it's not exactly the same as having Odegaard in there. When you have Jorginho, it's not exactly the same as having Thomas Partey in there. But do I think those players gave their 100%? No, I don't. And so I'm not buying even though they don't have the same quality as Odegaard and Thomas Partey, the way that they were getting owned in midfield was unacceptable for players of their quality. You may not rate them, but They are not slouches. This We have to have higher expectations of our players and stop get them jail out of free an out of jail free card just saying they don't have enough quality. Those players have more than enough quality to play much better in that game than they did. Do I think that Arteta made some the bad decisions in terms of the personnel? Yeah, I think he could have played one of Odegaard or Thomas Partey just to give us a little bit more of continuity in midfield. But my God, some of the stuff that I saw in that second half from some of our midfielders was absolutely diabolical. The way that they were giving the ball away, the way that they were not winning their duels, the way that they were giving away first balls, second ball, third balls, the way that they weren't tracking men, the way that they weren't tracking back. No, that is not quality. That's application. Um, Yo-Yo says Sporting Lisbon had players who were out due to suspension and finished the game with children. The squad is good enough to not be knocked out again at home by a poor side. I think people are really trying to use this. We just don't have the squad and we need to just buy players and it'll be fine next season. For me, this is a mentality thing. And you can do a lot more with less if you apply yourself properly. And we did not do it because we're so focused on the Premier League. Now you better be focused because there's a lot more pressure to win it. Neil says, I put this squarely on Arteta as his team selection inspired Sporting more than us. We are just as bad in Europa League as in the Champions League. Still no justification for demolishing Highbury. So taking out all the stuff about demolishing Highbury and stuff like that. We're just as bad in Europa League and Champions League. I don't know why it feels like we're so afraid to play stronger teams in the cups. It feels like we're really, I mean, we still played a rotated squad and we got injuries, so and what I personally feel is we get more injuries when we're more stretched. We get more injuries when we're not controlling the game. We get more injuries when we're not playing at a good level. And I think when you have to do a lot more to win balls and we're stretched and we're panicked and stuff like that, that's where you get a lot of injuries. I think a lot of our injuries last season came as we became more stressed. When we weren't winning our duels, we were just not really playing 100%. That's what I think. And so do I think 100% if we had played a stronger lineup, we would not have got those injuries? No. But, did not playing a strong lineup keep us from getting injuries? No. And so we probably could have played just a stronger lineup at the very least and applied ourselves a little bit more, because I think giving Sporting the exact same opportunities to exploit us encourage them to continue to do it. So I do think Arteta made a mistake. I'm not sure why, we don't try to play stronger lineups in cups so we don't just get bullied out of them, and why we can't make one or two changes instead of 5 or 6, because every time we trust the squad, the B team lets us down. And I know that that sounds bad, and I know that that's, so we love some of our B team, but every time that we've done the B team thing, made 5 or 6 changes, we've went out of the competition. Manchester City, Sporting, Brighton. Easily too. Bullied, or not really. At Manchester City, I'll say that it wasn't that easy, but once Thomas Partey came off, it was pretty much, business as usual for Manchester City. So I do think Arteta made some mistakes there. And that doesn't mean I want him out. It just means that I don't think he did the best. Arsenio says, I want the Premier League title, no excuses or pathetic PR responses from the club like we're ahead of schedule as we are only expected top four, your bumhole. That's funny to me. Ash says, we need to keep protecting Partey. We need DMs who can play and be reliable. We can't keep protecting Partey. We need DMs who can play and be reliable. And when Arteta said, our players need to be able to play every 3 days, I do think that the players that popped up into my mind right away was Thomas Partey, Emile Smith-Rowe as well. Those people kind of popped up in my head, and I was like, yeah, I think if you look at Rodri, who is probably the standard in terms of DMs right now, in terms of availability and level of commitment and consistent performances, Thomas Partey gives consistent performances, but we cannot rely upon him in every single competition. And so we are going to have to look beyond him. And I think he's a fantastic player, but I don't think it's any coincidence that we're looking at players like Caicedo and Declan Rice. Those players are more defensive midfielders. I think that Declan Rice can play as an 8, but, if you look at his injury record, he basically never gets injured. He's like made of steel. And so, you know, for a team that's going to be playing in the Champions League next season, you're going to have to play your best 11 in most of your Premier League games, and you're going to have to play your best 11 pretty much in the Champions League. We're not going to be able to just 5, 6, 7 changes and just kind of barely make it through the group stage. It's not going to happen. So I do think Arteta is looking beyond Thomas Partey, because protecting him is hurting us, because if he doesn't play, we do struggle because we don't have any other athleticism in our team. None whatsoever. So in midfield, at least, so I agree. We can't keep protecting him. You know what I mean? And so we need to look beyond him. And, I know that we brought in Jorginho, but he's only on a certain amount of time. Like, he's not on a big contract. So you need to go ahead and bring somebody in. And JM Bene says we lost a great opportunity to share the minutes to other players and spread the load in the team. We need to get this management correct. We haven't gotten it yet. We haven't gotten it yet under Mikel Arteta. We haven't been able to get that sweet spot of, maintaining a good rhythm in the league, but also, being competitive in the cups. And I think it's not just a quality thing. I don't think everybody that's going through in these competitions just has so much more quality and depth than us. I think that they play stronger lineups all the time. They play strong lineups in the cups. They play strong lineups in the league. They make a couple of little changes and make smart decisions on when to rest players and when not to. Basically, what we do is play our best 11 all the time in the league, and we did this last season as well. And then in the cups, we play the B team, and the B team does not get us through. It just doesn't. We need to change that. And Goni says, we don't have the quality, Jess. That's obvious. Even a blind man. What quality do you think Viera has? The problem is people are really focusing in on Viera. But even if you take Viera out, we started with Martinelli, Gabriel Jesus, Reece Nelson, Xhaka, Jorginho, Zinchenko, Gabriel, Saliba, and Tomiyasu. Ben White came on to replace Tomiyasu, and Holding came on. From minute 1, we were not playing well with a team that was strong enough to do better than what they did. It's not just a quality thing. Of course, the quality needs to improve. But if you are actually sitting there thinking that the reason why we didn't win that game is because the team that we had out there was not good enough to put in a good performance, you're deluding yourself. You're making excuses. I know that Viera didn't play well, and that's what I'd get people in the comment section going, Viera shit, Viera shit, Viera shit, Viera shit. But a lot of those players start for us. Hello? Like, come on. They started for us in the league, and they've won 5 on the bounce. Some of those players played in those positions. Jorginho played against Aston Villa. He played against Leicester. Trossard, he's played multiple games for us. What are we saying? Zinchenko starts almost every single game. Xhaka starts almost every single game. Tomiyasu is a fine player. Ben White is our best right back. We did not go out because of quality yesterday. You guys are making excuses. Don says there is a drop-off in quality when Jorginho and Viera play instead of Partey and Odegaard. However, there should have been enough for Sporting at home. No disrespect. Exactly. And I'm not saying that Sporting are a bad team, but the only issue that I have with that midfield is that there was just nobody to dominate the area. So if you're going to play Jorginho, you cannot play Viera. You have to play Odegaard so that you have somebody that's controlling the ball. Because Xhaka, if you have him as your main controller, he's slow on the ball. He can't really move the way that Odegaard does. The way that Odegaard floats around, controls the tempo. He's such a high-touch player that now Xhaka is no longer our main midfielder running our midfield. Like, he's not that anymore. And so when you have Jorginho that's not dominating the area, and you have Xhaka that's not really controlling the ball, Viera, you can't play him in that scenario. So either drop Jorginho and play Thomas Partey, or don't play Viera and play Odegaard. And then also don't play Zinchenko with Jorginho ever. It doesn't work. It's always getting exposed, and Tomiyasu should have started on the left or Tierney. That was a huge mistake. But there is a drop-off in quality, but that doesn't mean that it warrants that horrendous performance that we saw yesterday. I just can't. I know people want to, because it's a get out of jail free card. It's, we didn't have enough quality. It's fine to go out. Nobody before that game was saying we're going out because we didn't have enough quality. So if you need to raise your hand and tell me that you said that we were going to go out of that competition, because when I did my preview and I looked into the comments, I didn't see anybody say we're going out. When I did my show after the first leg, everybody said when we go back to the Emirates, we'll smash them. So if we didn't have enough quality, why are you guys saying it now and you weren't saying it before? Because it's not quality. Those players did not perform, and they can play a lot better than what they did. We do need to improve our quality, but that's not the reason why we went out yesterday. I get that people want that badly, but it's just not. I see a lot of, it was Viera. Viera didn't give Gonçalves the ball in the middle of the pitch and let him chip Ramsdale. He didn't do that. I just, no. Richie Rabbit says Tommy was brilliant at right back for the whole last season. Diallo says Viera's biggest problem is that he's not Odegaard. Same for Nelson and Eddie, and more for Jorginho. They are not replacing elite talents. And one thing that we did talk about was the trade-off in qualities, not the drop-off in qualities. So we have a lot of players that have quality that are nothing like the players that they come in for. And if we want to play the same way all the time, that's a problem. And that's my Tierney issue. Tierney is a very quality player. He can come in and play well for us, but we won't change the way that we play to suit the way that he does things. Tomiyasu, quality player, doesn't have the same ability going forward as Ben White. So we lose a little bit of something there. He's different, but we don't change the way that we play in order to suit him. Viera is nothing like Odegaard, but when he comes in for Odegaard, people expect him to do the exact same thing. Their attributes, the way that they do things is nothing alike. They're not similar in any way. Jorginho is nothing like Thomas Partey. So even though those players, I do believe that they have quality, maybe not the same level as Odegaard, Partey, and White, maybe not that, but they're so different in what they do that if you're not going to change the way you play to suit them, which Arteta never does, tactically, he's inflexible, it's very difficult to use those players. And so either Arteta needs to change the way that he plays to suit the players that he has coming in, meaning instead of putting Jorginho in no man's land, you make sure that he's backed up by a left back that, can shut the back door, and you have an athlete around him. Then, if you're not going to do that, then you can't play Jorginho. You can't play the same way you play with those players with the other guys because they don't have the same assets. They just don't. Let's see. Sammy says if Sporting didn't score a goal, 1 in a million, these meltdowns wouldn't be happening. I'm going to tell you this, Sammy, if they hadn't scored that goal, they would have scored a different one because the goal was always coming. Everybody that I was speaking to at all on Twitter, everybody said that goal was coming because we had no control in the second half. We were horrendous. And so that goal was 100% coming. It may not have been that wonder goal, but it was coming no matter what. We were just not up to it. And so I get that. It was a 1 in a million goal and all this kind of stuff. I even think like if we had squeaked through with a 1-0, we still would be having a conversation about how poor the performance was. It wasn't good enough. It just wasn't good enough. And I don't buy that the Jorginho that played against Aston Villa and played against Leicester couldn't have played better against Sporting. Sorry. Done. Mark says no manager changes their beliefs and tactics on the basis of 2 or 3 players. Players need to adapt. We do not change for the sake of 1 or 2. Either stay on the train or get off at the next stop. No, you do have to adapt in some ways to the players that you have, especially when you have Thomas Partey as your number 1 central defensive midfielder and the guy backing him up is Jorginho. They're not similar in any way, shape, or form. So how is Jorginho meant to adapt to playing like Thomas Partey? How is he supposed to gain athleticism overnight? Is he supposed to buy it from somebody? Is he supposed to, find it at the, find it somewhere? He can't do it. So Arteta does need to adapt because against Sporting in Lisbon, as soon as he shut that back door and he put Tomiyasu in, we looked a lot better. So Arteta does need to adapt. And if he's going to, because Arteta's the one who wanted Jorginho, by the way. So he cannot bring in a player that's 31 years old that cannot run and say, play like Thomas Partey. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. I think tactical flexibility is something that Arteta needs to work out. Or he needs to buy like for like players and bin everybody that cannot do it, because otherwise you can't use your bench. Lionide says you could hear Arteta told Zinni to straighten up during a stop in play. Mike nearby. What does straighten up mean? Ex Zombo says, why can Real Madrid, Bayern play their strongest 11 midweek and again on the weekend, but we can't? I don't know. It's definitely something that we need to get used to. Maybe Arteta doesn't believe that they can do it. They don't have the fitness, but there are a couple of players that I do suspect can do it midweek and at the weekend, but it's not all of the players. Gabriel Jesus, I know he can do it when he's fit. Saka, we know he can do it. Martinelli, I think he can do it as well. Xhaka can probably do it. Odegaard can probably do it. Ben White can probably do it. Gabriel, we know he can do it. So I don't know why we don't try it. We just don't try, in terms of putting out it. We've never, the last 2 seasons, we've never done it. We play the A team and the B team, and I'm not sure why it doesn't work. But also Bayern Munich and Real Madrid are on a different level to us. So I'm not sure that they're a great comp, but there are teams that, we play against in our league that have played stronger lineups in cups and have done better than we have. Martin L says, by the way, I think Tomiyasu and Ben White can deputize for Partey better than Jorginho can. I don't know. Maybe, but I'm not an advocate for moving fullbacks and defenders into midfield. The Gunner 66 Scorpio says J20 had a stinker. Viera lightweight gets knocked off the ball. I've been saying all season we've needed backup in midfield, young, energetic players, and a striker. That's why I wanted Edu out. Still do. Well, we tried. We did try. We tried to bring in Caicedo, and we couldn't bring him in. So it's not like our Arsenal did not try to bring in a more athletic profile for that position. And we brought in Jorginho at a cut price, and he's been all right. So I don't know if Edu needs to necessarily get out. He has a big summer where he'll have Champions League to wave in the faces of these players to, get them to come to Arsenal and to bring in our number one target. So I'm not really into Edu out right now. I do think that, Viera is not a midfielder. Like, he's more of kind of like a number 10, and you need to have a platform for him to play with because he's not a ball winner and he's not a high touch player. And Jorginho is not like Thomas Partey. So, you have to modify things a little bit to get them going, and we just haven't done it. But we do need, players like that, and I think we'll do that in the summer. Chris said, so with us not playing up to our standards, Arteta said this, how can we judge the players that are not our first 11? Can the Viera, Jorginho's, Tomiyasu's play on their best day the Arsenal Arteta way? So with us not playing up to our usual standards, how can we judge the players that are not on our first 11? Well, we know that they didn't play up to their level because we've seen them play with the starting 11 and more of the starting 11 and do well. Again, like I still think Viera will come good. I know people are on him heavy. I've never seen Arsenal fans on a player like this, especially a young player, but I get he came with a big price tag or whatever. But he played well against Brentford and against Wolves in the Premier League. He came on against Aston Villa and did a good job. So, and he was playing more with the starting 11. Jorginho played more with the starting 11 against Leicester and Aston Villa and was fine in those games. Tomiyasu, he played for us all last season. So we know that they can play the Arsenal Arteta way. But the thing is that they have to have certain players around them to make it work. When Viera was playing in the starting 11, he didn't play with Jorginho and Xhaka with no legs. And, he played with Thomas Partey. I think he played with Thomas Partey and Xhaka. And then the other time he played with Odegaard and Thomas Partey. And he played fine. So it's all of them at once. Not making small modifications to limit some of their flaws, and then them also just not stepping up to the plate. There was a lot of things going on yesterday. Let's see. I saw a super chat. It's from True Gunners TV. Can I jump on, Jess? I'll send you the link in a second. Let's see. Score 7 says Edu can't get big deals over the line and we need big players. This is Arsenal. Edu is good for 50 million deals and lower, but when it's 60, 70, 80, 90 and more, he can't get it done. Kevy Kev says, I'm not knocking Viera and J20, but Partey and Odegaard should have started, in my opinion. I think at least one of them should have started just because you can get away with it. We just lost everything in our midfield. We know Odegaard and Thomas Partey do a lot of heavy lifting, and they've pretty much left the rest of, they basically put themselves in a position where they do all the work, and then Xhaka can make late man runs and do a little bit of stuff on the left-hand side, but he's not the main guy in midfield. So when you leave Xhaka to kind of be your main guy, we've seen that before, so it doesn't work. And so, yeah, I think he probably should have started at least one of them for sure. Let's see. Saksham says Edu will get Gundogan after hyping Rice. Yeah. Let's see. So, yeah, but I do think that, like, you guys know my feelings on not having not glorifying going out of cups and stuff like that. It's not right. It doesn't work. That's not the Arsenal way. We should be playing a lot better, especially at home. But hopefully they've learned their lesson and they can rebound. And we also, have a little bit of an issue at the weekend. We're not going to be going against, Crystal Palace with Viera, which I do think would have been a banker because of how poor they're playing. Now they're going to have, an interim manager in the dugout, which, Arsenal really need to be up for that game. And we have some injuries. So I'm not quite sure how we're going to get through this because Saliba is just not a player that you need right now to go down with an injury, right? And then there was also some rumors of, Gabriel and Zinchenko also looking a little banged up after this game. So the toll just feels like it's going to be too much. Hopefully not. Brandon, I sent it in the TFT Arsenal chat thing. Let's see what else you guys are saying. Saksham says Viera only works in open spaces like Bruno. Yeah, like Bruno. Bruno also gets moved out to the right wing and plays 10 and can only really play there when he has, substantial midfielders behind him. He's very similar in that way. And so I do think that he suffers a little bit from people saying, okay, you're coming in for Odegaard, so you need to play like Odegaard. He's never going to do that, but he needs to do more. He needs to do more for sure. Let's see. P. Trim says, Jess, Grealish is getting his first consistent run at Man City this season after 100 million spent. Viera is in his first season. I'm not really worried about Viera. I think a lot of this, going overboard and stuff like this is going to come back to bite some people in the ass. Like, I don't understand why he's the target, but I think, again, it's big accounts have said that he's trash and all this kind of stuff. And you know what I mean? So I'm just going to keep my powder dry because if you are choosing to remove all the context around Viera and say because we spent 35 million on him, he should be Odegaard, that's on you, but I'm not going to do that. Hakeem is saying, thank you so much for your super chat. Says the video thumbnail brought me joy as a United fan. Arsenal fans can't blame Edu after every loss. Easy scapegoat. I think only like a couple people have blamed Edu for not getting big targets over the line. I think we had a multitude of issues yesterday, but what I will say about United fans is that you guys have done a lot of laughing, and if you guys don't win the Europa League, it's going to look silly, so you guys better fucking win it because all that laughing and you guys don't win it is, yeah, it's not going to be good for you guys. But fair enough, you guys got through. Congratulations. Logic says, today speaking, Viera is trash. He has tons to improve on. Why is Viera the main one? I just don't understand. Like, I'm never going to understand why it's Viera. I get that he was poor, but even when he plays fine, like the other day, he played fine. People were like, he was the worst player on the pitch. He was this and that. I do feel like he's a Pepe or, he's just the next guy. I don't think he's perfect. Marquinhos' red card was successfully appealed and he won't miss Norwich's next 3 games. You guys didn't see Marquinhos got a red card that was not right. So I'm glad that that was taken away. I'm gonna bring Brandon in a second. Hey, what's going on?
How are we doing? You all right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm feeling a lot better now, to be honest. I've licked my wounds, and I'm at the point now where I'm just like, let's just get it all out there, and then we got to move on because we got Premier League on Sunday. But what are your kind of thoughts on everything that happened yesterday, post the TFT that we did yesterday? Because you were pretty upset that.
Yeah, I'm still very disappointed. I don't know. There's a fine line, really. There's two ways of looking at it. The first way is, okay, we can concentrate on the Premier League now. If we win the Premier League, all of this will be forgotten about because at the end of the day, the top prize that you want to win at the beginning of the season is the league. And we never expected to be in the position to be able to even compete for the Premier League. So the fact that we're there, I think we will go 8 points clear on Sunday with 10 games to go. It kind of masks over what happened yesterday because I want to pose this question. We're in a title race, we're 8 points clear, or we're going to be 8 points clear, I think. If it had been the other way round, where Manchester City were 8 points clear of us, would we have seen the same lack of application from the players yesterday? I don't think we would have. I think the players would have took the competition a little bit more seriously. The manager would have took the competition a little bit more seriously, because when you've got a juggernaut of a team like Manchester City that 8 points clear of you, it's harder to make that gap up. But with us being 8 points clear of them, I kind of feel like they didn't apply themselves as best as what they possibly could. But it doesn't take away from the fact that it's a worry, because we had 7 first-team players out there on the pitch yesterday. I know Jorginho doesn't start for Arsenal week in, week out, but he's still a player who has vast amount of experience, who's won the Champions League before. So for him in particular, not so much Fabio Viera, but for him, there can be no excuses. I think it was more than a strong enough team to win the competition. And now we've put ourselves in a position where we've got a big problem on our hands, because ultimately the pressure has ramped up massively on us now, because if we happen to not win the Premier League, then all of this will have been for nothing, because at the end of it all, you finish the season winning nothing. And as great as it has been to be in a title race, if you finish the season winning nothing, you can have regrets at the end of it and think, well, Sporting Lisbon, it's a favourable tie. We should have gone through. We could have won the Europa League. I think, we was favourites to win the Europa League this season. But yeah, it's a worry, just because, like, I look at these players and the way that they applied themselves yesterday. As I say, 7 of our first team players out there. You can forgive, the changes, like the players that don't play for us week in, week out. But if they are struggling to play 2 games a week in the Europa League, when next season they've got to play in the Champions League against much better opposition, and regardless of whether we like it or whether we don't, Mikel Arteta is going to have to field our best 11 2 games a week.
That's what most teams do. That's the reality, that, like, I think people do feel like we need to have depth in the squad to have a second team to play in another competition, but that's not actually how it works. Your best 11 basically plays every 3 days. And
Yeah,
so,
and
I feel like we've missed an opportunity to kind of try it a little bit and see who can do it and who can't. But maybe Arteta already knows who can do it and who can't. But, I'm looking at the team and I'm like, y'all do realize you're going to be playing every 3 days. So you can't go into one competition and just say, you know what? I'm not really feeling it today. Like, I'm not really feeling the Europa League today. And you're not above the Europa League either. the way that we've applied ourselves in the Europa League for me was arrogant and unprofessional. And we had these conversations before, and it was hard to have them because people were, we were still in it and they felt like it was okay because we were rotating the squad. But we've been poor the whole time. Like, even in the group stages, away from home, especially, we just we went like PSV owned us away from home. They owned us. Like Zurich owned us, or whatever that team, not Zurich, the Norwegian team. They owned us, and people said it was the turf. Like, we are not applying ourselves in those games, and I think every single game you go into, you should try to do more.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I mean, obviously, we're going to look to make improvements in the summer so that we've got that extra depth that we've got there. But when fans talk about we haven't got the squad depth to compete on two fronts, I think that's a load of rubbish. A load of rubbish.
I do too.
You know, Fabio Viera is a Mikel Arteta signing. He cost £34 million, right? Jorginho, okay, he wasn't Mikel Arteta's first choice signing, but he's a guy with vast experience who's won the Champions League. It's not like we was playing kids out there. We was playing, experienced professionals, players that have cost a lot of money, that have come in with a high reputation out there. So I don't really see that as an excuse. Not only that, you've got Gabriel Jesus, who's just come back from injury as well. And it's a massive boost to the squad. So to lose like that at home to a team that we should be beating, but not only that, a team that has been knocked out of the Champions League. How do we expect to compete against the top teams like Bayern and Real Madrid and all that if we can't even beat Sporting Lisbon, who have been knocked out of the Champions League over two legs?
But see, here's my thing. It's like, people are like, obviously this season is what it is. We're fighting for the Premier League. Hopefully we get it. It could be a massive, massive deal if we do that. But next season, the requirement or the job is going to be not only to try to push for a title again, but qualify for Champions League again and play in the Champions League and don't embarrass ourselves. That's a huge step up for a group of players that have gone out of every single cup with a whimper. Like, that's a huge step up. I really think people are like, oh, well, I saw people saying, oh, I'm watching this Champions League and I think Arsenal could get all the way to the final. We ain't getting into no final. Like, not the way that we're doing things now. Arsenal fans need to realize that this next step up is going to be a steep learning curve. And if we're not prepared, we could end up, playing in the Champions League, playing in the Premier League, and maybe not even qualifying for the Champions League again because we can't do multiple things at once. It's going to be a huge, huge step up. And I'm not seeing signs of a team that can do it, but it's something that they're going to have to do because we need to be a consistent Champions League team. That Arsenal cannot go back. We have to keep going forward.
It's a massive step up. You're right. And playing in Europe is kind of where you find out a little bit more about your team, because there's no easy game in Europe, no easy game in the Champions League, regardless of what team it is, because you have to go to their ground. That could be anywhere from Portugal to Spain to wherever. And then you know, teams that play Champions League football regularly apply themselves differently. Do you know what I mean? Whereas it just seems like every other competition this season that we've been in, we haven't taken it seriously, whether that be the manager and his decision making and his lineups, or whether that be the players and their application. It's just like, I look at the draw again today. We could have played Juve, which would have been a tough game, like over two legs. Don't get it wrong, but I just see that as a tie that is winnable. I look at the Europa League this season, and I just think, why didn't we go for it? It's probably arguably the easiest Europa League for us to win in the entire time that we've been in it. When you look at the teams that are left in it, I know you got Manchester United, I know you got Juve, I know you got Roma, but at the end of the day, you're going to have to test yourself against these sort of sides at some point, because you're going to be playing them in the Champions League. And I don't know, it's a tough one. It's a real tough one. And I just feel like the way that we went out, it's very, very disappointing. I mean, can you imagine if we lose to Crystal Palace on Sunday? Do you know what I mean? And then it all
That's
falls
the worry
apart.
now. That's the
It's
worry
a
now.
massive worry. It's a massive worry. The players and the manager don't realise what they have just done. They have put huge amounts of pressure on themselves, because if we do not win this league, and I stand by what I said on the terrace yesterday, if we do not win this league, it is a failure by the standards of the fans at the beginning of the season, by the standards of the football club as well. At the beginning of the season, they said top 4 and Europa League. There was players that come out and said it. Most fans said it. Basically, top 4 and a trophy. If we finish second, regardless of whether we've been in a title race or not, at the end of it, we win nothing. And, you know, I know a lot of people don't like what Lee Gunnar has to say, but he made a great point yesterday. If Arsenal finish second and win nothing, and Tottenham finish 4th, we've basically had the same season, because all we get out of it is Champions League football. And is either team going to do what's required to be able to actually properly compete in that competition? Probably not. Hopefully we do.
I disagree with this just a little bit. I disagree with because when you say failure, I feel like it's a very heavy word that needs to be attached to some sort of action. I don't think we can just be like, because basically, like, I was in a group chat earlier and people are saying it's a failure. It's a failure. Every time you don't get a trophy, you're a failure. And I'm like, well, then basically you're saying for the last 3 seasons, we failed. And if Mikel Arteta has been a failure for the last 3 seasons, why is he still here? Why are we happy with him this season? Is because we're not accounting for the progression. So even though that, yes, on paper, finishing second and finishing 4th is exactly the same, Tottenham have done nothing and they haven't progressed. We've progressed. And so I can take that, even though I'll be disappointed, which is really the word that I choose to use. If we don't win the Premier League, I'm going to be in my bed crying for days. Like, I am going to be very disappointed. But at the same time, I can look at the totality of the season and say, we have improved and we're going in the right direction. But I stand by I stand by the fact that I feel like the step up from where we are now to only being able to put eyes on one competition to being, Champions League qualification again, fighting for a title, making sure you get silverware, fighting in the Champions League. That's a huge step up. And I hope we don't get backward. But, I'm okay to disagree, agree to disagree on that. Because I get some people just are like, if you don't get a trophy, you failed, period. So I get that.
Yeah. See, again, I'd call it failure from that context, not necessarily meaning that I want, drastic changes to happen. The only thing that I drastically want to happen is proper improvements in the summer. And I'm not talking about Arsenal forget about how much we spend. I want Mikel Arteta to give Edu Gaspar a list of players that he wants. And I want Edu Gaspar and the Cronkies to go out and get him his number 1 choice, not his second choice, not his third, not his 4th. We've had this with Jorginho. We had this with Trossard. For as good as Trossard has been, and Jorginho has done, all right as well, it wasn't his first choice. So we can't afford that in the summer. We need to go out and get our first choice targets. No excuses, because otherwise this could be kind of like a Leicester season, where you end up back on that downward spiral. Because, as we've already said and as we've already witnessed, we're struggling to compete on 2 fronts now, let alone when you're in the Champions League. Like, what are we going to do then?
Yesterday's game for me only cemented the idea that we have to go big in the summer. And I'm not saying that, I've seen people we need to spend 450 million and bring in 8 players, not that. But we need to make sure that 1 through 18 is Champions League level, top level players. It really cannot, and everything beyond that can be a little bit different, but we're not we need more, and it can't be young kids, like it can't be projects. It needs to be players that are ready to go 100%, like cuz we're going to get swallowed up. Like we're going to get swallowed up. Like I can feel it. Like not that I'm saying that next season is going to be terrible, but I can feel that step up is going to be like a real wake up call. I was also looking at our team yesterday and I was like, a lot of them haven't played in Europe, let alone the Champions League. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is going to be a real, I even thought the refereeing felt different yesterday. Just having a non English referee and having like that Lahaz guy, it's like a whole thing, I think, that the club is going to have to remember like, this is going to be something else. I'm happy about it, but I really hope we prepare in the summer because we don't have, like, we just need more, especially in midfield.
Oh,
Especially
100%.
there.
We need 4 or 5 players, I think. When you really sit there and think about it, I think we need a backup to Ben White because for as good as Tomiyasu has been, he's not available. He's always injured. That guy. We 100% need another centre back, at least one, maybe even two, because if Saliba or Gabriel breaks down, you've got Rob Holding coming in. You've got Kivior coming in. Kivior, didn't have the greatest of game in the first leg against Sporting Lisbon. He doesn't look like he's ready. I think he'll probably end up going out on loan. Then you've got the Kieran Tierney situation. Will he stay? Will he go? If I'm Kieran Tierney and I'm looking at my minutes, again, for as well as Zinchenko has done this season, why can't Kieran Tierney get in this team? So we might have to look at a left back. Thomas Partey position is an absolute priority because this guy, again, doesn't seem to be able to play more than one game a week, but is so instrumental to how we want to play and so important that we can't afford to be without him. We can't afford to be having a Jorginho and Granit Xhaka pivot in the midfield because it doesn't work. Then you need a right winger who can cover again for Bukayo Saka because he's one player who we can look at and say he can play 2 games a week and still maintain the level because he's shown it week in, week out. However, he's been very lucky in terms of, not picking up any major injuries and stuff like that. Whereas all the other players in the team, you can kind of pick faults around either the way that they play or their availability or their application in games. So there's still drastic improvements that need to happen at Arsenal still.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm even thinking about like maybe I was in my feelings. You guys, like I told you guys, like I was licking my wounds. I stayed up all night. I was watching freaking Housewives to make myself feel better. Like I just been going through it because I've been devastated over this. Like I really wanted us to get to the next round. I wanted to feel what it felt like again to be in a European competition. We get knocked out so early, and it's like, but even players like Reece Nelson, as good as that goal was, do we need to give him a new contract? You know what I mean? Like, do we need to just keep giving people chances that have already kind of shown that they're not good enough? But then also I was feeling like Reece Nelson should stay right after that goal, but then after his performance against, Sporting out. So maybe I'm just in my feelings, but we need better players and we need to do it quick. It has to be a big summer, and I'm hoping that they're saying that they've planned for it, but I hope they really have because we need it. And we need players with Champions League experience, I think. Like 100%. Like we don't have it. Like people were saying like Asensio, that's not exactly the type of player that I would want, but I don't know if we need anybody else that has no Champions League experience. We have so many of those players already. You need to bring in people that take advantage of the fact that we're fighting for a title, we could potentially win it, and we'll have Champions League. Take advantage of that and go after players that are like that know what they're doing. We have enough kids.
Yeah, 100%. And midfield is gonna be a huge priority. When you sit there and actually think about it, Jorginho is in his 30s, Granit Xhaka is in his 30s, Thomas Partey is nearly 30 as well. We've got an aging midfield, and they're aging quickly. And so that's almost 2 or 3 players there that you need to come in, maybe of the age of a 23 to 26-year-old. But like you say, they have to have that experience within the Champions League. You got Jesus, you got Zinchenko that have obviously played Champions League football. Saliba, I think he played Champions League football when he was at forgot the name now. Marseille, that's it. But apart from that, that's it. That's all the players that have played Champions League football for Arsenal. And Jorginho.
You said Zinchenko and Jesus, right?
Yeah, I think they played for when they played for City, didn't they? Yeah.
Zinchenko, Jesus. But then also when you look at them, like they have experience in good teams, but they haven't led those teams. Like they're still learning as well. So really, we don't have enough, and learning on the job is fine, but you lose things when you're learning on the job. And so I'm sure the team is looking at that, but this has made me feel a lot better. I just wanted to like chit chat because I told them at the beginning of the show that we're not just going to talk about the good things, because quite frankly, there wasn't anything good about the performance yesterday. Nothing. It was the worst case scenario. The performance was dire. We had to play all of our players. We had to go into extra time. We had injuries. We went out on penalties, so there wasn't really much positive to talk about, but I wanted to talk about it in the light, actually, chit chat about it. And then now we don't have to talk about it anymore, but Patrick Viera was sacked, this morning. What do you think about that just in general? Like, do you think it was harsh? Some people are saying it was harsh because he had such a difficult, cluster of games after the World Cup, and, they're just about to get easier. Or do you think that it was kind of like the right thing for them to do because they've been so poor?
It's an interesting one, really. I mean, I'd like to know what the ambition is at Crystal Palace from the owners, because you look at the players that they've got within that team, you look at the amount of money that the owners spend at that club as well. They're never going to be anything more than a mid-table club. And Patrick Vieira has maintained their Premier League status. At the beginning, he had them playing some good football. He was getting a good tune out of, some of their players as well. I just think it's a little bit harsh. And I also look at as well and think, well, who are you going to get in that's better? I don't see a manager out there that's available that will go to Crystal Palace and do a better job than what Patrick Vieira has been doing. So it's a bit of a strange one for me. It's also a little bit of a worry as well, because we've already come up against teams this season that have had a bit of a, let's say, manager bounce. Obviously, they won't have an official manager in place by Sunday, but we've seen it before where teams have sacked their manager, and then the very next game, they're a completely different team altogether. Everton being the prime example. So we've got to be careful with that as well. But yeah, a strange one for me. Very strange.
How concerned are you about Saliba? I know that's what like a lot of people are talking about. We've sustained some injuries and stuff like that. How concerned are you? And if Holding were to have to play, like, because some people are saying it'd be fine. My levels of stress just thinking about it have went straight through the roof.
Yeah. I mean, Saliba, I haven't actually heard any more about his injury. I don't know whether it's long term or short term. I heard it was a bit of an issue that he was having with his back. So hopefully it's not too serious. Hopefully, he can recover from that pretty quick. I think in a one-off game against Crystal Palace, you can maybe afford to, use Rob Holding if you need to use Rob Holding. I have nightmares about Rob Holding being up against Wilfried Zaha. But, that's where you have to have that communication at the back line, in midfield to help him out a little bit. The guy's not played a lot of football for Arsenal this season. He's not the greatest defender in the world either. But for a one-off game, I think we can, kind of get away with it. If it had to be a thing where Rob Holding has to come in for 3, 4, 5 games, then it's a massive, massive worry. And then the question would have to be posed again: why did we not get a centre back in January? So, yeah, tricky one that. But hopefully, Saliba will be back.
Yeah, I'm hoping that Saliba's back. It looks like Tomiyasu is going to be out for a while. Like they've already kind of said, like it looks really bad, and so yeah, his injury record is not great. That's definitely something you need to look at. A lot of our backups or like players that are on the bench are quite injury prone. But I still expect us to beat Crystal Palace. We need to, if you are going to go out the way that you did in the Europa League, acting like you didn't care about this competition, you better show up on Sunday. That's my main thing. Jesus is back. I'm sure that he's going to start that game, and they're just going to have to suck it up because you have the international break after. You can go half speed with your international team after that. We have a Premier League to win. So, yep, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. I know the top 6 show is going to start in like 3 minutes. I'm not on it, but if you guys want to enjoy a little bit of that, I'm sure there's going to be tons of banter, a lot of Arsenal talk, a lot of that. So make sure you guys tune into that. And I will see you guys tomorrow. I'll do like a little mini preview for the Crystal Palace game. Jump on for a little bit and chit chat with you guys. Make sure you guys are following me on Instagram and all that kind of stuff. All the information is in the description. And Brandon, do you want them to follow you anywhere? Are you good?
I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, just want to make sure. All right, you guys. I'll talk to you on the next one. Bye, y'all.